First of all, big thank you to Michael, to Renata, and to everybody at BIALL for inviting me along today. It's an absolute pleasure to be here to address this conference, and of course to LexisNexis as sponsors. I was due to give this talk at the main conference. At the time it was going to be taking place in Harrogate, and I'm delighted to be able to present a compressed version here. So I'm on a 10-minute timer, and I will try and deal with as many points as I can. And obviously, Michael, do step in if I overstep the mark. I will be very happy to be cut off in my time. Okay, so first of all, very brief introduction to me. My name is Chris Howard. I'm the Director of Professional Legal Education at King's College London. My background was as a lawyer. I trained as a lawyer in city practice. I then taught at BBP University for a number of years, teaching on GDL and LLB programs there. I joined King's to teach on a master's in construction law, and then 3 years ago was put in post as Director of Professional Legal Education. And in a way, my appointment into the post was part of King's response to some of the challenges I'm going to outline now. So I've called this Challenges and Opportunities for Professional Legal Education. First of all, just a sort of definitions point, what do I mean by professional legal education, and why do I use that phrase as opposed to just law or law education? My background, as I said, is teaching at BBP, which is one of the professional providers, i.e. traditionally seen as a vocational element of training. And I put on the screen there some of the classic exponents of training: City Law School, University of Law, obviously we all heard of, Nottingham Law School, BPP, and also some of the new entrants into the market: Barbary International, College of Legal Practice. And of course there are established universities, and by the way, apologies for the sort of UK-centricness of this talk, but that's my field of practice and education. University of Sheffield is an example of a Russell Group University, which has a professional education division. Now, King's hasn't had that to date, but King's, as I say, is on a journey of innovation, and obviously I speak from my perspective. This is a snapshot from our strategic vision, and our vision is to be a civic university, to educate, to inspire, to shape and transform. That's the goal we've set ourselves for 2029. And one of the components of that, although it's not explicit on the slide there, is embedding employability. And I think the point I want to kind of make here is that, to me, the main way to respond to the challenges in professional education, which are about challenges affecting the legal sector as an employer, I think will lead to a change in all universities in the way in which they approach employability and try and embed that within their education programs, be they academic programs, vocational programs, or other. I think we're going to see a blurring of lines. So what are the challenges? By the way, apologies if my points run off the screen, but hopefully you can move your windows around to make sense of them. I think the main challenge is really to maintain relevance. I think the study of law is going to be under attack from a lot of angles and will be forced to change over the next few years. By what? Well, I think regulatory change, and I'll mention that in a moment, technology, a change in employability, and I know some of our other speakers are going to talk about this, globalization, the challenge to widen participation and make that happen, and finally, changing student aspirations in a changing sector. The establishment of our Professional Law Institute was one of the things King's have done to try and achieve that. Our legal clinic is another innovation that we've introduced, and our Vision 2029 statement really captures a lot of that. So now I'll run through those challenges in a little more detail and some thoughts on potential responses for law schools. So I mentioned regulatory change. Obviously, the key regulatory change in the England and Wales environment is the Solicitors Regulation, the Solicitors Qualifying Examination. So the SQE is a sort of, has been presented as a kind of existential challenge to law schools, in that it no longer makes a law degree a requirement for training as a solicitor. The only absolute requirement from an academic point of view is passing the SQE. Similarly, the Bar have introduced changes to their regime to try and flex it up. And indeed, I was giving a version of this conference to the new Legal Solicitors Regulation Authority in Ireland. And I think in Ireland, there's going to be a change in training, possibly a relaxation and liberalisation of some rules. How can we respond? Well, I've put on the screen a few examples there of new programs that are going to start to emerge, combining practice and academic study, new kind of broken up programs. We've validated a 2-stage bar training program by the Inns of Court College of Advocacy, which I think is going to bring a lot of innovation. And I think we could see a greater diversity of law and programs in response to the possibility for students of not necessarily studying a traditional law degree or even GDL, but doing a different and more varied route. Legal tech, I suspect, is going to be picked up by other speakers, so I won't dwell on this too long, but this is a huge change to the way practice is being delivered now, how legal services are being delivered. And I think if we don't educate our law students in the use of legal tech, then we are going to be missing a trick. But then the question is, how do we educate them and at what stage? And I've put on the slide there a few thoughts about that. What we can do, creating legal tech modules, embedding legal tech as part of the experience. And I think libraries obviously have a huge role to play here in using technology in the delivery of knowledge and education in a way that exposes students from the outset to this kind of process. It gives them the opportunity to explore how legal technology can change the way they learn and study. Employability. I'm not going to dwell on this very long at all because I think that Adam's going to be picking up points around skills. But what it needs and what it requires to be a lawyer in the 21st century is going to change fundamentally. It already has, but I think it's going to change further. And so what students will need is, of course, black letter law, but much, much more than that. And again, I think all educators and all aspects of education need to think about how they can deliver those better. We've embedded some new non-curricular modules in our LLB program, building up some of those skills, but there's a lot more that we could do too. Global lawyers, I mean, I think this is going to be impacted by COVID-19 clearly. I was just hosting a conference yesterday where we were discussing the extent to which travel is going to change and the client interface is going to change in law firms, but certainly I think it's still going to be the case that students will maintain a global approach to their learning. They will think of themselves not as England and Wales lawyers or Irish lawyers, but lawyers for the world, and how do law schools and universities serve that aspiration? I've given a couple of examples there of, or an example of one degree which sets itself up as a global law degree. But again, how do we provide the knowledge base for that? How do we enable students to achieve those ambitions? Widening participation, it goes without saying that diversity and accessibility remain a huge challenge, both for undergraduate and postgraduate study in terms of accessibility, but also in terms of the profession. The profession is doing everything it can to try and change this, but it's still not gaining the ground it needs to gain. And obviously this has got a huge added impetus at the moment with the Black Lives Matter movement and other movements which are looking at how we make sure that we actually achieve the goals we're setting out to achieve in terms of diversity. But again, I think answers are out there, and some of the new training routes, some of the means of dealing with some of the economic imbalance, I think are going to be part of the solution here. And then finally, the sector as a whole is changing. And again, I'm sure others will talk about this. Law firms are not what they were. They're using new business models. New legal tech startups are emerging all the time in their multitudes. And I think the attitude of students and young lawyers is changing too for their careers. I've been to whole seminars on the fact that young lawyers don't want to become partners in law firms anymore. They don't necessarily have that aspiration. They want to be entrepreneurs. They want to set their own boundaries. And there's a whole host of new jobs that those young lawyers can do: legal project managers, innovation leads, tech lawyers. All of these new titles that didn't exist even 3 or 4 years ago are becoming major goals and ambitions for some of these students. Now, again, as a law school that's used to teaching to a very linear pattern, you know, you learn the law, you become a lawyer, you become a partner, you become a QC or whatever the goal is. How do you deal with a student who says, actually, my goal is to be a business person who happens to have a legal training, or to be a tech lawyer who specializes in legal tech and knows enough law to support that? How do law schools deal with that if they maintain a very closed mindset? And I think the answer is to open up more cross-faculty working, more openness to different modules, different types of study, and those new aspirations. And finally, that social aspiration, I think, is really important. Students will want to do more than just earn money. They see that there are world problems that need solving, and they want to be part of that. We're having another talk of our own on the 24th of June, so a very quick plug for that, Essential Skills for Future Lawyers. Do enroll for that if you can, but I'm going to stop there because I think I'm just about on time. Is that okay, Michael?
That's absolutely superb. Thank you, Christopher.